If you've spent any time looking through the eShop on the Switch, you've noticed one thing: there's just a whole lot of slop on there. Well, it looks like Nintendo may be trying to clean that up a bit. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And we had, I guess, our first indication that Nintendo was looking to clean up the eShop a bit back when the Switch 2 first launched. We had this article here from automationmedia.com, and this is back from June 20th. Nintendo Switch's infamous, we'll just say Girls series gets renamed due to possible shadow ban by eShop. So I'm not going to read out the article here, but I do have a link to it in the description. But just for a summary, basically that keyword in the title seemed to be getting shadow banned, especially in Asian countries. And if you're not familiar with what a shadow ban is, it's basically if you look up that keyword, you're not going to get any results for it. So even though there may be a game out there with that word in it, you're not going to see any results with that word. And what many of these games are is they're just like this slop of AI generated images, and many of them are things like slide puzzles that are just of pictures. There's not really much of a game here. Well, it looks like according to this article from IGN, Nintendo is looking to do more than just shadow ban some of these titles. You can see the headline here: Nintendo rolls out new eShop publishing guidelines for Switch 2 in Asia, seemingly to curb spam games. And in the article here it says many of these games share a number of commonalities: obscure publishing companies with little available public information, very little game content, low quality assets, numerous bugs, inaccurate store page description, and often AI generated storefront art that wasn't representative of the game itself. A number of them also center around adult content. And if you've spent any time on the eShop, I have no doubt that you've already seen this. You see games that look like they're basically the same game over and over with just different images. And many times these games will be listed like a 90% off deal when it's really always 90% off, at least it seems that way. So this can kind of bump that software up in the sales rankings. And in the article here they do say that they spoke to several developers and that Nintendo now has new publishing guidelines for the Switch 2 eShop. Now right now these seem to only apply to the eShop in Japan and other regions of Asia. And they do go through several of the rules here. It says first here, regarding bundles, the restrictions state that in the first year of a game's release, only a maximum of 5 game bundles may be distributed. After the first year, that number goes up by 1 for each year the game is available, up to a maximum of 8 different bundles. And basically what this is to help curb here is to keep this slop from just being added into these bundles. So they would create bundle after bundle after bundle and try to get these titles up in the sales rankings. And the next guideline they have here, it says many of the new guidelines discuss sensitive content and include specific rules for what qualifies as sensitive content in the first place. Now I'm not going to read through all the list of the content here, but you can think of basically if Nintendo sees that it's going to be damaging to their brand, then they can take it off the eShop if they want. And Nintendo's been a lot more open as to the content that they will allow on their systems, especially when you compare, say, Nintendo of America back in the 90s when they said a game like Night Trap would never be on their system, and actually I own Night Trap for the Switch. So I don't think this is going to be like, say, the next GTA 6 won't be allowed on Nintendo's platforms because maybe it instructs criminal activity. I'm thinking this is going to be more along the lines if the game's trying to direct you to do something criminal in real life. And they do say that this list is not exhaustive. Nintendo can take the game down or just decide to not publish it, as I mentioned before, if they think that it could be damaging to their brand. And then the next new guideline here, it says it is prohibited to provide inaccurate descriptions of the contents of a product. It is prohibited to provide descriptions of the content of a product as under development if it is not expected to be implemented in the product. So basically this means that if the description of the game is not correct, then we're going to pull it down or we're not going to allow it to be published. I'm not sure if this is a new guideline. I would have hoped they've always had this guideline. Maybe this is just re-emphasizing this. But obviously there's been enough problems out there that they feel the need to kind of reiterate this or just really emphasize it. And then the next guideline here is to help combat some of those renames like I mentioned earlier. It says other guidelines prohibit changing the name of a product without a good reason, meaning a drastic update, or to make it consistent with a game's name on other platforms or with other games in a series. Developers are also prohibited from changing information on the product page after the page is live, and developers are asked to contact Nintendo representatives if they intend to distribute an application, and this is in quotes, that does not include game elements. So let's say if you're creating an application, we'll just call it Kawaii Alarm Clock, and there's actually no game element involved, you've got to contact a Nintendo representative and let them know that that does not have any game elements. Now, the article does go on to say that some of the developers that they talk to aren't quite so sure that these new rules will help with any of the eSlop. In fact, one developer makes a pretty good suggestion here, and that would be just to do better tagging and recommendation. The unnamed developer here basically compares it to the way Steam does things, and the quote here says, their algorithm will more or less naturally bury AI slop or very low effort releases. Sure, not every good indie rises as high as they should, but the visibility situation for indies with no marketing budget is significantly better on Steam. It gives you a shot when you release. On the Nintendo eShop, you just get filed into an endless list of releases never to be seen by anyone. Unless you have a big name outside Nintendo already, it's close to impossible to stand out. And another developer that they spoke to pointed out that basically Nintendo has had the right to refuse to publish any game up till now. And then another quote here kind of points out how knocking down those bundles really doesn't help much. For example, they now limit a new release to participating in 5 bundles within the first year, but if each of those bundles can span a month, that means you still have your game discounted for nearly half of the first year. And then the developer also points out what we've already seen. It also seems like the new guidelines are only for Japan and Asia. I don't know why they wouldn't apply them globally, but it's good to see them covering issues like deceptive product descriptions and misleading screenshots. Now, I'm sure Nintendo has been able to remove any game they've wanted to, but I believe these new rules just kind of help emphasize it before you go to publish something. If you're looking through these rules and you know you're breaking them, you might think twice before putting it up there. However, I'm not so sure that if you're churning out eSlop that you're going to be deterred any, as long as you're still able to make money, and maybe just open up under a different publishing name if you might get blacklisted. However, I think one thing that would help the eShop more than anything is at least provide the ability for users to rate games. And this would be games that they have confirmed that you purchased. Now, whether or not you want to lock that down to having to require them to have purchased it digitally, or maybe you're going to allow 1 review per cartridge, because you know each cartridge has a unique certificate. So say you want to review a copy of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe that you have physically, and then you loan it to your friend and they want to review it, well, they would not be able to because there's already been a review submitted for that specific cartridge. So allowing only 1 review per software, whether you're talking the digital copy or the physical copy, would help prevent people from doing a reverse review bomb, to where like the developer can just kind of spam in a bunch of positive reviews. I mean, they could buy hundreds of copies of their own game and review each of them, but that would be more of a deterrent because Nintendo's going to take a cut of every one of those purchases, so they're not going to just get all that money back. But let me know your thoughts about all of this. Have you noticed all of the eSlop out there, especially on the Switch? It does seem like the eShop on the Switch 2 is a little bit better, but you don't have to scroll for very long under the sales section and you start to see some of these slide puzzle games and these bundles coming up near the top just because they're 90% off. And let me know if you've ever purchased a game and found out it wasn't exactly what you thought it was going to be. Drop your comments below and let me know your thoughts. And if you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing so. It really does help the channel out quite a bit. I want to thank you for watching and be good.